everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren. In this video, I'm going to be making over a table, but there's some bad news. I grabbed this table last night at a thrift store for just $16, and I looked at the weather app. It said that there was no rain in sight, but then I wake up this morning to rain, and it has like rained all night. The table is soaked, so I'm gonna get it out of the truck and up here, see if we can salvage it, even though it has been soaking in water all night long. Cross your fingers for me, because this is gonna be a really cool flip if I can save it. I think it's gonna be a best idea to go ahead and open this table to where like the leaf goes, so that way it's just like open and it can dry inside of everywhere as much as possible so that the water stops settling in. All right, I think I'm gonna wipe it off with a towel. Leave that there to dry out as well. And I'll come back in either a few hours or maybe even all the way tomorrow. I think I'm gonna get some fans on this thing and see if we can't give it some time to dry out and hopefully still be able to save it from the landfill. Okay, it's the moment of truth. I've given this table over a week, I think, to dry out. I was already working on another project, so I just figured the longer the better, but it's time to tackle this thing, so we're gonna just dive right in. From what I can see, there's like no warping or anything, and it's looking pretty dry, so I think I saved it. It has been quite some time since I picked up a kitchen table. The last time I did this was, I believe, Flipmas of 2022, and I gave away the table and chair set to a family in need, and that was a super cool project. But I have a little bit of a different plan for this table, but when I saw it at Goodwill for $19.99, I knew that I had to grab it. These oak tables are such great pieces. They have really good bones. And the even cooler thing is that I think the lady must have thought that the tag said $14.99. So I got this table for $16, including tax, which is unheard of. So I'm really excited. I have no idea how it's going to do in my market, but we gotta stop worrying about that right now, because first I've gotta actually flip it and then see what it looks like before we can list it on Marketplace to actually sell. So the first thing that I'm thinking of doing is getting rid of the orange oak, which is very common in this 80s, 90s, 2000s furniture, but it's just pretty outdated. Plus, this table has definitely seen better days. Some of the finish is coming off and it's a bit dirty here and there. So I am gonna be doing one of my favorite methods of stripping furniture. I use the word favorite lightly, loosely, because stripping is definitely not my favorite part of flipping furniture. But if I had to choose one, I think this method would be near the top. So I am going to use acetone to strip at least the top and the base of this piece. I'm hoping that it's going to work and cut through the finish. Sometimes this doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, I'll just switch over to straight sanding. So let's get ready. I have done a full-blown video with a 4-piece furniture set and how I used acetone to strip off the finish and make it obviously look completely lighter and brighter, and that was super fun. So if you're interested in like a ton more details on acetone, I'll go over a few details in here, but I'll also make sure to link that video after this video is finished up, so be sure and check that out for more info on acetone. But basically, you're just gonna grab a big can of acetone at any hardware store. It doesn't have to be this specific brand. I got mine at Menards. It was $20 for this entire gallon, and I bought 2 at the time, but I've used this for several other projects, so it is going to last you. I think I'll have to get another can for this project because I'm like running pretty low, but that is your main source of stripper for this project. And then of course you're going to need some type of face mask. This is the one that I use for my spray paint. It's a respirator, so it's really going to filter out those chemicals. And then also I like to use a chip brush to apply the acetone and kind of move it around, wipe it back. These are just super cheap, so I've found that that's one of the easiest ways for myself at least to activate the acetone and kind of get rid of that actual finish. Of course, we're gonna need some safety glasses because we gotta stay safe and we don't want any of the acetone jumping up and landing in the eyeballs. That would not be fun. And then of course, also we wanna protect our hands, so we're gonna go with some gloves. I have not had any issues with these specific gloves and the acetone like eating through them, so these seem to work just fine. Again, all of this stuff will be linked down below for you in case you're interested in trying out the acetone. I have a whole box of these rags that I am going to be utilizing to wipe back the acetone. And then you can just grab any type of container. I've heard some of you guys tell me that sometimes acetone can like melt away plastic. I didn't have any issues with like my cottage cheese containers. Those seemed to work fine, but I did go ahead and just grab a glass jar for this time around. And without further ado, let's get started applying it to small sections of the tabletop. I think I'm gonna kind of move it apart a little bit and then we're gonna get going. So personally, I like to pour my acetone into a different container like so. That way it's just a lot easier to work with. Like this huge jar is harder to work with because there's a small opening, and I just think it's easier like this. I'll put my mask on in just 1 minute, but I just wanted to point out a few things that I've learned over the few projects that I've done with acetone. And one of the main things is, in my opinion, you should work in small areas. The larger the area, the quicker the acetone is going to evaporate and then basically dry up, and then you'll have to add more acetone. And to me, that's just like using extra product when you don't really need to. So what I like to do is just dip inside of my cup here, and then I'll apply it onto the surface. So like for this table, I'll probably break it up into 3 or 4 sections, like this section of the table. And then I'll just sort of rub it in, let it start to do its thing. Seems like this is a pretty thick finish. So honestly, it might not work on this. After all that talk, it might not work on this. If it does work on something, usually by now you would be seeing lots of difference. I'm only seeing a small difference up close. So if I wipe this back, there's not really a lot coming off. Like usually this would be fully brown or whatever with the finish. Like it would work, I think. It would just take a really long time, I think, to use this. Like there's a few spots that it kind of started working on, but honestly, if it's going to take that long for the acetone to get to working, then I might as well just either use a different stripper or start to sand myself. And since I'm already set up for stripper, I might opt for that. Sorry about that. I guess I can't use acetone, but that just tells you that like it's not perfect for every project, which is why you can do a little test area, see if it works. If it doesn't, then switch modes and try a different method like stripper or sanding straight. Okay, I decided the method I wanted to do was just to grab out my trusty old Surf Prep sander, the 5-inch orbital, and go to town with stripping back this finish. I've got an 80 grit on my sander, so it should cut through the finish pretty quickly. And I'm still gonna be careful. Like, I'm pretty sure this is solid oak, pretty sure. But you know me, I'm always second guessing myself, and so I don't wanna, accidentally bust through anything if it isn't solid oak, but I think it is. I should get through this pretty quick with this 80 grit, and then we'll move on to like the rest of the base of the table and things like that as well. I got the whole tabletop portion all sanded down, and it did not bust through any type of veneer that's potentially on there, which I'm really, really happy about. But now I need to go ahead and do this lip area. And so instead of using my 5-inch orbital sander, I am gonna go ahead and switch over to my 3x4 electric ray sander. And this just is a different shape. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to work with in like smaller areas. And also I just wanted to show you really quick, I don't really show this too often, but this is my Surf Prep POV8. And it's a vacuum system that is connected to both of my sanders. It's got a double hose attachment and then a double cord attachment. And so everything is plugged into here. And once you turn it on, you can either turn it on manual mode, which means that this will just stay on and it'll suck the dust up no matter what, even if your sander's not running, like it would just be on right now. Or you can turn it on to automatic mode, which is what I always do. And whenever you put your sander on, the dust extractor vacuum portion will also turn on and it'll suck the vacuum dust. But then when you turn it off, it'll take about 5 to 6 seconds and it will also finish its self-cleaning cycle and turn off as well. So I like that setting better, especially when I'm filming, because it just seems better for me, because like when I stop sanding, generally I'm going to be talking. So that's kind of one really good perk for this for me specifically. But I love that I can have both sanders out all the time, and that way on this project I don't have to like go switching out my sanders, but all I have to do is just grab the other one because it's already all plugged in and already hosed up, so it's gonna suck out the dust just like the orbital did. Technically you could use them at the same time. Obviously that would be more so if you had like more than one person in your shop, but I'll link everything down below and you can use my code FFT10 for a discount on everything on the website except for the vacuum, but still a great deal to get some money off there. So far I've gotten the tabletop all the way sanded down with an 80 grit and a 120 grit. So now I am moving back to a 150 grit. And basically what we're doing is closing up the wood grain a little bit. When you go with the 80 grit, it opens the wood grain a lot because it's so coarse. But when you either stain or do a paint wash or whatever, you don't want it to be open because that also really is like a rough surface. So as you kind of work your way up in grit, you get finer and it's gonna start to close it, still allowing the stain or paint wash to soak in, but also making it a lot smoother and evening out all of the tones. So I've got my my orbital sander loaded up with a 150 grit, and that's what I'm gonna do on the top. I figured I'll just focus on the top first, and then once I'm done getting it all smoothed out, we'll tackle the bottom, and we'll kind of go through the same methods as the top here. Now that the top is all sanded down, I think what's gonna be the easiest for me to do is to remove the top off of the base of it. And honestly, I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with the base, whether I'm going to sand it all the way down and have the whole entire table be like wood like it is now, but just a different tone, or if I'm going to paint the base of it and then just stain / paint wash the top. So either way though, I think it's gonna be easier for me to work on the base when the top is off of it. And it looks like these have some, basically it's attached here at the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that free and remove that and set it aside while I decide what I'm gonna do at the bottom here. Yeah, this is gonna be much easier to work with, even if I decide to paint it, even if I decide to sand it down. If I decide to sand it down, I'll probably also take the base off as well. There's a pretty big chunk of missing veneer down here on the foot, which I didn't really realize. So I'm thinking I may have to fill that. And if I have to fill that, I think it may have gotten worse due to like that water damage or when it was out in the rain. So that may kind of solve my issue of whether or not I am going to paint or stain this, because there's missing veneer like this. You can match it and color it and stuff like that. I don't really prefer to do that, especially on stuff like this, but I haven't really even ever tried to do it. I think this is pretty water damaged, so let's peel back some veneer here. So right down here is what I was talking about, and there's quite a bit of lifting veneer. I'm trying to decide if it would be better to peel this back or shove some glue in there and clamp it. Either way, I'm gonna have to fill some of this. But if I can just peel it back like that and then put some glue in there, that might be the best way to go. And then I'll just have to fill a little bit less. I'm just kind of gonna open this up a little bit and squirt some glue in there. All right, so that has to dry now, which is gonna take a little while, but I think while that's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of start scuff sanding this area of the rest of the base. That way I'm not really losing any time. And then once this is dry, I will be able to come back, scuff sand that, fill it, sand it down, and then we'll be able to like prime and paint. So this is gonna be fun. Now I've got to decide what color I'm gonna paint it though. That is the question. Okay, I decided I'm gonna go with a pro foam pad. It's a medium grit, but it's going to be coarse enough to just scuff sand this. Honestly, like this base is in pretty good condition. I'm kind of bummed that I'm not keeping it wood, but again, I just think that this is going to be the best option. But with all this curve and things like that, I don't want to damage any of that while I'm sanding. So this Pro Foam pad here will really help contour to the edges and things like that. And what's really cool is Surf Prep not only has these for their sanders that they make, but they also have them if you don't have a Surf Prep yet. They have like other 8-inch orbital ones, and they have them that are complementary to other sanders like mouse sanders, things like that. So check out their website. They have a lot of great accessories, even if you don't necessarily have the Surf Prep sander itself. I still think the decision is up in the air because as I'm sanding this down, I'm like, I feel like I should keep the wood. And the finish is coming off really easily, even with just this. So imagine if I use like 120 grit, it would come off really quick. So I'm just gonna sand it all down, see what I can do with that, and then I'll make a real game time decision. I'm gonna go ahead and take these clamps off and see what we're working with here. Looks like it's okay. I think I'm just gonna like sand it out, see what happens. So I think it's pretty repaired, like where I put the glue, everything's nice and evened out. And again, we've just got to worry about this area with the missing veneer, and then there's a little bit here and a small amount here. So I'm gonna see what I have in my stash. If I can like use some wood-colored wood filler, I may be able to kind of salvage this and potentially keep it all wood. But I'm gonna go ahead and sand these all down first, and then we'll see what I can do. So after sanding this one down, some of the veneer is also kind of missing on here, but it's kind of flattened out, so still might be better to just paint the base. So far I've gotten all of the sides sanded down and the tops. I still got these little ridges to do, but before I do that, I want to see if I can fill. The more that I kind of sanded, the more filling I kind of found that needs to be done. But I have this, it's called Goodwill, and it is like a wood-colored filler. So I'm hoping that maybe when we use it in these spaces, like once it dries, it's gonna be it's gonna blend in. I don't know, this might be too dried out. I think this is a pretty good match for the color. And then once it dries, I'm assuming it'll dry even lighter. I think we're onto something here, maybe. So while while the wood filler was drying, I went ahead and did the edges here of the feet. Figured that you guys have watched a lot of sanding, so I just went ahead and did that off camera. But now the wood filler is pretty much dry, I believe. So I'm gonna just take a sanding sponge here, a thin one. It's a little bit more dense, and sand it back. I just want to be pretty careful because I don't want to go too low or make any of the wood filler chip away at all. So I'm just gonna go nice and slow. All right, all in all, I think that they turned out really good. So next I'm going to move on and we're gonna go back over to the top. I think I've ultimately decided, since these did turn out fine and the paint wash can mask anything that's maybe not perfect, that I'm just gonna go ahead and keep everything wood so that we can have a solid wood oak table. So I'm gonna start with the tabletop. I do want to go ahead and put this in the middle, still have it spread out, but just so that I can make sure it's all very nice and evenly coated, even when the leaf is in. I'm really pleased with the tabletop and how it turned out. Really quick, I am going to take a tack cloth and just make sure that there's no leftover dust on the top here. A lot of the times there can be, sanding dust left behind. And the tack cloth is a bit sticky, actually really sticky. And so if you just wipe it across your surface, honestly, whether you're staining, painting, in between sanding, all of it is great to not have any leftover dust. So this is a perfect time to utilize the tack cloth like this. Okay, we are ready. I've got my paint here. I am going to be doing a paint wash. I know that some people don't enjoy paint washes, but to me, it's the way that I can get the most authentic wood look when I want to keep it this light wood, but I don't want to just top coat right over it because it will pull out those yellow tones. So this is going to basically neutralize the yellow tones and allow me to still have a nice finished looking piece that is ultimately wood. And I think that this is my favorite way. So I will show you some of the materials that I like to use. I have the paint, and this is the Algonquin color from Fusion Mineral Paint. I have used this on many different projects where I do paint washes, and I've just really fallen in love with it. And then I'll water it down with some water, and then I have gloves, and I have an applicator pad as well as a brush, because I am gonna try an applicator pad, but we'll see if I like that method. Usually I do just use a brush, a stir stick, a container for my paint wash, and some paper towels to wipe back the excess of my paint wash. So let's do it. So first things first, I am going to add some water to my jar here. And I know I say this a lot when I do paint washes, but I truly don't measure. I measure with the heart, and that's just kind of the way it goes. So I am going to, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, so I think I need to make sure to rinse this out first. So we've got our jar here. Now we're gonna fill it with water. And then I'm going to measure with my heart for how much paint I put in. And then we're gonna stir this up. I probably put, if I had to guess, it was like 20% water, 20% paint, 80% water-ish, something like that. And I'm hoping that this will cover the entire table, top and base and legs, everything. So let's try the applicator pad first. I am going to make sure to go along the grain with the wood grain. Kind of liked that method, actually. It was a lot faster, and I felt like I didn't use quite as much product. The tabletop looks incredible. So now I'm gonna switch to the base here, which is the middle portion. I'm gonna do the same method. I love the applicator pad method. I think it was a lot more efficient than a brush. So I'll add it on there and then I'll wipe it back with my cloth still. Paint wash is all dry everywhere, so that means we've got one more step before reassembly, and that is to add on the top coat. Now, I've told you in several videos that I like to keep my poly inside of my spray gun because I have multiple nozzles here. And so I have some sitting in here. It's about time for me to clean it out and start over anyway. So I am gonna be adding something to my poly to just warm up the wood tone a tiny bit, not really change the color of it, but even out everything along with that official top coat protective layer. So what I'm gonna do is I only have a bit in here. I don't think it's gonna be enough to cover the table several times. So first I am going to add in my poly, which I'm using the Varathane water-based satin color or sheen. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump some more of that in here, like so. And then of course, always strain because you don't want chunks in your materials that are coming out of your spray gun. And then the other thing that I am going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of stain. I chose the Old Fashioned, which is also water-based. You don't wanna put oil-based in with the water-based poly. That would not be a good look. Or if you're using oil-based poly, you wouldn't want to put water-based stain in. Just make sure that you're matching it, especially when they're still wet. And I am just going to put a tad bit in here, and then I'm going to mix it up, and it's basically going to create a toner. I've learned this from a couple of the people that I follow over on Instagram. All right, that should be enough to tint it a little bit. There we go. Just a little bit brown, nothing crazy. And then once I spray that on, it should even out everything and really give it a nice warm tone, as opposed to still being a little bit on the cooler side. So right before I do the top coat, I am going to do a little sanding routine here. And basically when the paint wash soaks up into the wood, it does cause the wood to expand just a little bit, and then it kind of causes maybe a little bit of a raised wood grain, but that can be combated by, once everything is dry, just taking a really fine, like 400 to 600 sanding sponge and just knocking back that texture, wiping it back, and then applying the top coat. Let's get this table reassembled. Everything is all dry. I did do a few coats of top coat over the entire surface of the entire table, and everything turned out so good, and it all matches really well. I think the patchwork, it turned out to be just fine. So I am going to lay a blanket down on the top of this table so that I can like maneuver this base here, and we'll get the legs attached, and then once those are now on and they're really sturdy, then we'll also put the tabletop over the top of it. So when I'm putting these washers and bolts and nuts back together, I am making sure that I am just kind of putting everything back the way that it was, but when I get them in there, I'm not fully going to tighten them until I get all 4 legs on and like kind of secured, but then I want to make sure that it's all going to be even, because these legs can definitely, you want to make sure that they're like up and down straight, because since the holes for the bolts are a bit on the larger side, there's like a lot of wiggle room. So I've done this with another table. I did a coffee table, very, very similar to this, that had a very similar base. It was just much shorter and smaller, but I had the hardest time getting the legs on. So that's kind of something that I learned with that project, and I don't want a repeat of that project. This one was super sturdy when I got it, so I know that it's possible and that I can just hopefully get this back on like it was previously. Time to get the tabletop on. This is super hard to get together and apart by yourself. Does work, but can't get it. My wingspan is just not strong enough. Can lock in as well. The fact that this table had all of the working components, including the leaf, the locks, and I got it under $20. I mean, honestly, I didn't use a ton of dollars in materials either, so I have no idea what I can sell this for, but let's get it staged up and talk about the official numbers. So here is the table. I'm kind of unsure of how I am going to stage this. I might just take some really good pictures. Maybe I'll put some candles on it, potentially some greenery. But anyway, this is the finished product. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Just totally eliminated all of those orange tones. And I think that it's really going to look great in a modern home because of the color tone. It's more like a white oak now instead of like that orange oak. So this is way more trendy, way more modern, way more in style and light and bright. And we'll start to match those like more modern kitchens and things like that, because people are going away from like the orange oak cabinets and they're leaning more into the either light wood or even dark wood, but this, like a lot of mixed wood tones are also great. So this could be amazing for like an apartment or a kitchen in a home if you could left it extended, like so many great things. Although it doesn't have the chairs, this would be super cute paired with like some painted chairs or even some new chairs from like Amazon or something else. So super happy with how this turned out, and I'm really glad that I decided to go ahead and keep it all wood instead of painting the base down below. So like I said, we're gonna talk about the numbers of this piece. So I bought it for $16, and then all of the materials I had on hand already, but I'll go with like a breakdown of the cost of maybe like how much of each material I used. So sandpaper I used, and I probably used, let's just call it like 10 to 15, let's just say $15 worth. So now we're at 31. Let's just say $14 worth, just so that we're evening our numbers out a little bit. And that's just an estimate. So we're in at $30. And then the paint wash, I used like maybe two 2 tablespoons of paint, so let's just call it, I mean, it's probably less, but $5. And then the top coat, even with that little drop of stain in there, was probably around another we'll just call it $10. So all in at $45 for this table, which is a crazy transformation. Think about if you found one of these tables at a thrift store for that cheap, or even a little bit more expensive, like $60, and then put, you know, like $20 to $30 of materials into the flip, and you could get a table for yourself for under $100 if you came across the right one. I love how modern it is down below, because some of these types of oak tables have like claw feet and have like some really interesting designs. I really love the ones that are just a little bit more simple and basic, but still can be turned into something beautiful. I am still not sure how much I'm going to be listing this for. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments of how much you think I should list this for. I'm thinking, like, realistically, what someone might pay for a table on Facebook Marketplace is probably a lot lower than what I would truly like to sell this for, which is one reason why I don't typically go toward flipping tables in my area. But I say that with a grain of salt because I also have not tried in quite some time. I did sell a table and chairs set that I had in my own home for like $450, I think, one time, that I was getting rid of. So that gives you kind of a range, but that was with chairs, and they were like Haywood Wakefield mid-century chairs. So I don't know. I think maybe I'll start around 500. But I'll probably take less. I have a couple of friends, I think I had mentioned that they live in Tennessee. One of them is Jessica. Her name is the Teddy James Co. or something along those lines on Instagram. And she sells these tables left and right for $500 in her area. But they're in high demand, and that's kind of one of her specialties. She never passes one of these up. So if you can get one of those bread and butter pieces like that, and you know people are gonna constantly buy them, that is amazing. And maybe this will work in my area. I shouldn't maybe talk before I actually try to list it. So I'm gonna get some nice photos, and I'll pop them up here at the end of the video, so that way you can see the end photos. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this video and really were able to see how easy it is to upgrade a simple orange oak table, or really any piece of furniture, and still keep it with all these wood tones. I'll link all of the materials that I use down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week, and I'll see you on the flip side. Well, it has officially been 6 days that this has been listed at $450, and I am very pleased to say that it sold for $400 in just 6 days. I decided that even though I did have a little bit of interest, everyone who reached out wanted to pay a little bit less. I got an offer for $375 on this, so I rebutted with $400, and she ended up saying yes. So I was totally okay with that, because I only put in $45, including the buy-in for the table. So that means we're getting a total profit of $355, which is almost 10 timesing the money that I put into this, which is a really great profit. And it really didn't take me that long. It was just a lot of sanding and the recoating with the paint wash. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and just were able to see how much a $16 piece of furniture can actually sell for if you just upgrade it a little bit. So they are gonna come and pick this up right now. I'm gonna get it all wrapped up and out the door. Well, I'm basically back where we started the beginning of this video, and I am so glad that that little mishap of me leaving this in the back of the truck, potentially getting water damage, did not affect the table at all. There was no water damage. This table turned out, it's probably like, I don't know, one of my favorite looks for wood. And in my future home, I definitely want to have a table that looks like this, or at least similar with these wood tones. Maybe next time I come across this type of table, because definitely I am going to be on the lookout for these types of tables if I can get them cheap, and do a makeover, but definitely potentially like painting the base of it instead of doing the wood look over the full thing. I'd really like to know what you guys think of the full wood look versus maybe painting the base and then having like painted chairs. I think that that would be a really fun look as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side.